And here we are at the Global Gurus podcast, Thought Leadership in 15 Minutes. Welcome to our podcast. So today we are usually having conversations with thinkers that are shaping the future of leadership in business. And of course, every episode, we ask our guests only 3 questions. What's the biggest problem that you see right now? Okay, what is the original methodology that you've built to solve this problem? And how are you applying it to create measurable real results in the real world? Okay, I'm Arthur Carmazzi with my co-host here, Rhett Power. And today we have the number one, okay, guru in communication, not only for 2026, but also 2025 consecutively, Giuseppe Conti. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Arthur, for the introduction. Yes, indeed, delighted to be in the negotiation category, leading for 2 years in a row. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you, Giuseppe, and let's jump right into it because we only have 15 minutes. I wish I got to bottle up some of that enthusiasm, Arthur. I mean, that is incredible. We need to sell that enthusiasm around the world.
There you go.
Giuseppe,
just watch the
podcast. Giuseppe, as Arthur was saying, we asked 3 questions. And so the first question is, what's the biggest problem you see right now?
Well, if we look at a global level, probably the increased number of conflicts that we see around the world and the growing polarization of society that makes, constructive dialogue and building consensus and those kind of things, much more difficult. If you look at the communication today, it's more focused on aggressive language and adversarial thinking rather than how can we work better together, how can we understand each other better to find better solutions.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Go ahead, Arthur. Go ahead.
No, well, now, okay, so Giuseppe, I mean, as the number one guru, you've got unique ways of dealing with this problem, okay? The way of negotiating, but it's not just negotiation. It's all about really kind of creating some kind of a mutual, not just win-win, but like some situations where people actually feel really great about working together. Can you tell us a little bit more about how, what your original methodology is?
Yeah. Now, of course, I wish I had the solution to solve this problem in the world. It's a big outside of the scope of this podcast, but there is one tool that we use in our negotiation and influence workshop, and that you're going to find also in my recent book called Negotiation Plus Influence Equals Success. And we call it dual vision. So what is the dual vision idea? Is that whenever you have a conflict, a dispute, you want to try to influence somebody, you're negotiating, or any other kind of challenging communication context, then you want to look at the deal from the other party perspective. So you want to understand your interest and their interest, my alternative and their alternative, my question and their question, right? So you want to put yourself into other people's shoes. You want to learn to present their case more persuasively than they can. So, you understand it so well, you discuss with the other party spreadsheet in mind. And then, once you have this understanding about how they see the deal, then you can make them choose what you want in their own interest.
Yeah,
maybe let me give you an example so that it becomes a bit more tangible for our audience, because it looks very complicated how to get somebody to choose what I want in their own interest. Now, let's go back to before I was a negotiation and influencing professor, I was in the corporate world. And I was negotiating with a leading pharmaceutical company for a senior procurement role. Now, imagine this type of scenario. I'm talking to the HR director, and I try to, one of the things which was important to me was continue the teaching. I was working and teaching at the same time, so I wanted to get this top job while continue my teaching activity. Now, I can give this message to the HR director. Listen, I'm already teaching at a number of leading business schools. It's something that I enjoy very much. It gives me the opportunity to meet some of the brightest people in the world. When I come back to the office, I feel full of energy. There is something that I learn every time. So, we have to make sure that I keep doing this. So I want to ask you that we have something in the contract which states that I can continue this teaching activity at the top 10 business schools in Europe. Now, you see, all this is true, but is not persuasive. So,
Okay.
if I now think about the other side perspective and I reformulate my message, then the same message may sound like this. I'm already teaching at a number of leading business schools. It's a great opportunity to build the brand of your company with some of the brightest people in the world and to attract talents into the company. For instance, with my current employer, this year we hired 4 MBAs from IMD, one from INSEAD. We did an activity with the Oxford students in Dubai. There is a huge value in my presence in those leading business schools. We should definitely continue to do it. Now you see that one of the simple way to get the other party to choose what you want is to talk about what's in it for them. Now there are other tools, we can use option, we can use question, but a simple one for the people to remember. If you wanna get somebody to do what you want, to talk about what's in it for them rather than talk about what's in it for you.
All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I wonder, Giuseppe, too, is this a skill that leaders can practice? And do you have any advice on how to, practice for negotiating and practice for having these type of conversations? Is that something you encourage?
Now, the good news is that a number of those skills can be practiced not only when you're having an important multi-million negotiation, but these are things that you can practice in daily life. Because you may have a disagreement with your children, with your partner, with colleagues, with your boss, with your direct reports, etc. So without waiting for the multi-million contract in front of you, you can indeed take the habits of looking at the perspective of the other party and try to understand more them before you come. I think something that we heard from Stephen Covey already 40 years ago in his wonderful book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. So one of the concrete changes that I see with the people attending my workshop is that they focus less on arguments and more on question and active listening. So, and again, you can do it every day with anyone around you.
Yeah, that's a skill that we certainly don't do enough of, which is try to think about other people and kind of live in their shoes a little bit, right, and understand their perspective. I think that's certainly something that sounds easy, but is probably hard for a lot of us to do. But
yeah,
Arthur, what
I was just wondering if so this is kind of also a little bit of a storytelling, about like creating a story or scenarios where the client or the person that you're negotiating with is the hero and that they're getting kind of what they need. Is that accurate?
Well, certainly storytelling strengthen your communication skill, no doubt. And now, from my experience, often people are afraid when you say, oh yeah, but storytelling, it may not be my skill. Is that, of course, we know the framework for storytelling, 5 or 6 steps, depending on the kind of model that you have, and, the hero, the challenge, and those kind of things. And then people say, well, but this is not really, if I was doing this, maybe I will be working in marketing rather than working in finance or in supply chain or in procurement. So now, the simple message that we can give to people in a story doesn't need to be always a very sophisticated thing. It may be an anecdote, an example, something that your competition has done, something that was done in another country, now you want to implement in your country, something that was done in a different business unit and now can be reapplied. So yes, your message is going to be substantially stronger if, rather than limiting yourself to facts and arguments, you can bring some life with real life examples, anecdotes, and stories that strengthen your message.
Yeah, I so much agree with that. Giuseppe, what for you? You've given us an example and a way to really rethink how we approach a negotiation. What's another idea, another tip? We've got about 5 minutes left, so we've got some time to learn one other big thing. Is there another tip or another useful thing that somebody can implement now as they go into maybe they've got a negotiation today as they listen to this podcast on their way to work this morning? Is there something else that they should be thinking about? Maybe not a tool, but is there something else that they should have in mind when they're going into a negotiation?
I think, rather than moving into a completely different topic, let me strengthen one of the ideas that I gave, right? I mentioned that one of the things we want to do is ask more questions and listen better. Now, there are a couple of listening techniques that became very popular also thanks to some recent books, like labeling, mentioning one word that the other person maybe repeating the critical word that somebody else mentioned. You also heard about paraphrasing, which is summarizing what somebody else said in a limited number of words. Let me give you a fair technique that is less known and that can strengthen further your listening. It is called on one end, on the other end. So once you get a message, then you start summarizing it in a way which makes it simple for the other party to categorize the good and the bad category. Now, the interesting part is that the person are going to talk about what you put at the end. So I could give a business or a private example. Which one do you prefer me? Do you want me to use a business example or a private example?
Let's do a business.
Let's do a business example, right? I was talking with, I was heading procurement, and I was talking with one stakeholder that really didn't like procurement. So he was telling me, Giuseppe, I really find working with procurement so difficult. You have so many processes, you're so slow, compliance, 3 bids, all those kind of things. It's a nightmare to work with procurement. I know that you could help me to choose the right supplier and to get more value for my budget. But, when I look at how difficult it is to work for you, I'd rather do the work on my own and then ask for forgiveness. Now, a very negative kind of message. Now, let me apply the technique. Well, thank you, Jack, for your openness. I appreciate it. So if I understand correctly, on one end, you find working with procurement slow, difficult, complicated, 3 bids, compliance, and all those kind of things. But on the other end, we can help you to choose the right supplier and get best value for the budget. Yes, and I never get enough budget, etc. So yeah, I really need to maximize my budget. So you see, from a negative kind of message, then you shifted the discussion to the few positive elements which were there. Try to apply it with your partner tonight. If you get a negative, a blame message, try to see, put all the negative in the first part on one end, and then on the other end, you put the few positive that you get, and you shift the conversation to the positive elements.
Right. Well,
All right.
super insightful. Super insightful for sure. Arthur, you want to wrap us up?
Well, I guess that's it for today. Okay, so we've got Rhett and Giuseppe, and of course me, Arthur Carmazzi, and we thank you very much for joining the Global Gurus podcast, 15-minute thought leadership, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be with you, Arthur and Rhett. All the best.
Thank you, Giuseppe.
All right.
Thank you.